Names like Matt Reeves, J.J. Abrams, and the man himself, Bruce Timm, being attached to Batman the Caped Crusader, I was extremely parts hype and cautious when I heard the news that this show was going to be released a couple of years ago. Because although these are big names who have made some great projects, that is a lot of creative hands in the pot. But with all that being said, I just watched all 10 episodes of this series. Let's get into it. What's up, nerds? It's your boy Eddie Knight. Welcome back to Nerdy Before It Was Cool, where we nerd out about TV shows and films, especially ones based on comic book characters. I feel like this is only right that I talk about Batman on my first full-length video on the channel in almost over a year. This version of Batman is a beginner. Unlike when we first got him in Batman the Animated Series, he was already that Batman we know and love in that show. He already had an extensive rogues gallery, and we just run into them here and there. Here, he's a beginner. He's almost a myth. Not many people in Gotham have even seen him, and people talk about him as if he's just some folktale.
The question on everyone's mind these days, what do you think about the Batman?
I think that's a really cool addition. I love that era of Batman because it just adds to his mythos. It adds to his badassness that most people don't even believe that he's real. I think the voice actor did a really good job with this voice of Batman. I was a little worried when I heard him talking as Bruce because it didn't sound like there was much duality. But that's exactly what they were going for here. See, they really dive into the aspect of Batman being the real Bruce Wayne and Bruce Wayne being the facade. He's fully in his Playboy era here when he shows himself in public, kind of like Christian Bale's Batman was in Batman Begins. He's putting on the Playboy bachelor lifestyle for the public to see, and he very clearly hates it. As much as I love a good old grumpy Batman, I think this is the version of the character that I like to watch on screen the most. This show isn't perfect by any means. It has some ups and downs, which we'll definitely get into here shortly. But with that being said, I can tell they really had a lot of fun and put a lot of care into making this. It has some of that DNA of Batman the Animated Series, but you can also see some kind of weird amalgamations of other versions of Batman in here, like Brave and the Bold as well as the Batman. You can tell they took notes from the BTAS animation style with drawing over the dark paper, but the colors pop a lot more here. They're a lot more vibrant and bold. Like I said, similar to Brave and the Bold and the Batman from back in 2004. But with no further ado, let's just get into how I feel about the show. And in order to do that, I think we have to start with the characters. After I talk about the characters, we'll get into some of the episodes that I thought were some high points as well as some low points. So there are a ton of characters in this show, whether it be Jim Gordon, Barbara Gordon, Penguin, gotta get into that.
What the hell? Oh my God.
Natalia, Harley Quinn, Harvey Dent, and many more. So before I turned on the show, I really didn't know what I was getting into. I didn't listen to anyone's reviews. I didn't read any synopsis of the episodes. I just dove right in. And they wanted to make sure that this was different from the jump. Starting off with episode 1 and Oswalda Cobblepot. I'm not a person who really cares if directors and writers decide to race swap or gender swap a character. As long as it's just not for shock value, I really don't care. But this feels extremely weird. With that being said, they made her very menacing, and how the henchmen talked to her, calling her mama, it was strange, and they made her really, really creepy. A lot of the villains are creepy as hell in this show, so I gotta tip my hat off to them for that. But for whatever reason, I feel like Penguin just should be the Penguin. I don't know why. With that being said, Oswalda is a straight up savage. She disposes of henchmen. She has some very evil plans. While I thought they were really cool to see on screen, I wish they were fleshed out a little bit more. She has access to this huge weapon where she can pretty much just bomb and blow up any building in Gotham she wants to while she's at sea. All of these episodes pretty much act like procedural television in a sense where every episode is essentially just introducing a new villain. The only one that isn't true for is Harvey Dent's Two-Face. Harvey Dent, for the most part, is the only one that gets a fully fleshed out ongoing story throughout this entire thing. There are versions of Two-Face which I fell in love with a little more than this version. This version of Harvey Dent is selfish. He's kind of a douchebag, really insensitive, and all he cares about is the optics and the numbers because he's running for mayor. Out of the 10, there's really just about 3 standout episodes for me, and that's episode 3, episode 4, and episode 5. Once those came on, I thought we were really gonna have a great series on our hands, but as I'll talk about, things kind of started to shift after these episodes. But let's get into those episodes really quick. So episode 3 had to do with the introduction of 2 characters, Selena Kyle and Harley Quinn. In episode 3, that's also where we get a little bit of peek at the death scene of Bruce's parents. It's a Batman series. We gotta have that in. I just don't think we'll ever see a Batman show or movie where that isn't at least shown in a flashback. Not only do we meet Selena Kyle in this episode, who has a ridiculous cat car, but we meet Dr. Harleen Quinzel. I thought that was an interesting introduction to her early. Some people might be upset that she's introduced as her own rather than being a part of the Joker story, but I mean, Bruce Timm created Harley Quinn. I don't mind if he takes some liberties with a character that he created, and I also don't mind her story being separate from the Joker's. Episodes 3, 4, and 5 are lightly connected, but not really. In episode 4, this is where we get the first Jim Gordon and Batman meetup. And this is one of the few moments throughout this series where I kind of got chills a little bit. I was wondering when that moment was going to happen and how it would work out. This version of Jim Gordon has a chip on his shoulder. He's very hard, cracked down, no nonsense on crime. He sees everything as very black and white. So I was wondering how that meetup was going to go. And it was pretty cool. We got a chase down scene in the building that Firebug set on fire. And once again, I told you they made the villains creepy. He's a pretty creepy ass villain in here. And the 2 sleazy cops, Flash and Bullock, basically let him out of jail just so he could start this building on fire so they could lure Batman in. I thought that was a really cool way to show how just dirty and sleazy these 2 cops were and how they really don't care about what Gordon thinks at all, because for the most part he's pretty disposable, which to be honest was the only interesting thing about the choice to race swap him in this version of the character, because this is the 1940s and you have a black man running the whole entire police department, or at least the task force. One theme that I enjoyed that they dove into in this series so far, it was definitely the corruption within the GCPD. Episode 5 was definitely by far the best episode of the entire series, in my opinion. We got some real Batman badassery in here with the smoke grenade scene. And this is also when we find out that Dr. Quinzel is Harley Quinn. Now, obviously, we already know that Dr. Quinzel is Harley Quinn, but we don't know if she's gonna be actually Harley Quinn in this series yet because there's no Joker. But I thought this was an extremely interesting take on Harley. Obviously, she's a therapist, but when there's people she can't help the normal therapist way, she then takes them down to this basement where she has all of them locked up, and she gets into some weird mommy fetish type stuff as Harley Quinn to basically brainwash these men to get them to see the world. She also gets them to write checks to charities and give away all of their money. So Harley's less of a villain and less of a sidekick in this show and more of an anti-hero. Her normal happy bubbly persona that we normally know Harley to have is what she uses when she's in the real world. But in reality, she's very cold, cynical, and sadistic. And I was really feeling this take on her. With that being said, that's for the most part all the praise I have. After episode 5, the show shifted into a lot of weirdness. Now, maybe part of this was due to my expectations, but when I get a new Batman series, I'm expecting that first season at least to be extremely grounded. Yes, Batman as a character ventures off into some weird stuff like Justice League Dark and things of that nature. But usually that type of mystic stuff is long down the road. In episode 6, we literally have a ghost of one of the founders of Gotham, who essentially hates poor people because he thinks that his tax money just goes to support them. So while he was alive, he essentially just went around robbing and harming poor people. And now he's back as a ghost and doing the same thing. So we're getting into weird ghost geopolitics. It's kind of, it's strange. It took a really strange turn after episode 5. And that wasn't the only mystic episode. We also have Natalia. She can essentially zap the energy from anyone's body. She's also extremely strong. I thought she was a pretty creepy villain, and it was kind of cool to see the horror elements. It was just so different tonally than the first half of the show. I don't really understand the reason for that big shift. It just introduced another element to what was already kind of convoluted. I mean, in episode 1, we have this whole storyline with Oswalda. Also, there's another storyline going on subtly in the background where someone put a hit out on Jim Gordon. And although they did try to mesh those two storylines together at the end, it seemed a little rushed and tacked on, and I don't think they executed it that well. With that being said, is the show worth watching? I think if you like the character of Batman, yeah, it's worth watching. I don't think it quite captured the essence of BTAS, and at the same time, I don't think they were trying to. Bruce Timm, when he did BTAS, he essentially changed the character of Batman as well as a lot of his rogues gallery and made completely new versions of them. So it doesn't surprise me that he went the route with these characters that he did. Honestly, the character studies were probably my favorite part of the show. I just thought that the overall storyline was just a little bit too muddled with too many different subplots going on at once. But overall, I enjoyed myself watching the show. There was a few iconic moments that legit gave me chills. But if I'm being honest, outside of episodes 3, 4, and 5, not many other ones actually stuck with me. But I gotta say, I do love how they held off the Joker reveal to the very end, because I was thinking they weren't gonna mention him at all just because we've gotten so much of him in the media lately, but apparently he's gonna be a part of the next season. With that being said, have you watched Batman the Caped Crusader? Did you enjoy the series? What did you like about it? What did you not like about it? Let me know down in the comments. It's good to be back. It's your boy Eddie Knight. This is Nerdy Before It Was Cool. Until next time.